Everyone at this table thinks they know exactly who we are.
And in about 10 seconds, they're going to find out they were wrong.
You don't have to do this, Fiona.
Yes, I do. I'm done pretending this started as a lie and staying quiet about what it became.
Once you say it, there's no taking it back.
Good. Because I never wanted to take it back. I just needed the courage to say it first.
The Radcliffe dining room could seat 40 people comfortably. Tonight it held 6, and somehow that made it worse. Candlelight, a table long enough to land a plane on, and Gus Radcliffe at the head of it, watching his grandson's fiancée like she was a well he wasn't sure had a bottom. Fiona Delgado had worn that green dress twice before, once to her cousin's confirmation, once to a funeral. Tonight, it had one job: convince an 81-year-old oil man that she was in love with his grandson, and dresses don't usually come with that kind of pressure sewn into the seams. "Tell me how you two met," Gus said, cutting into his steak without looking up. Cole answered before she could. "Land dispute. Our fence line runs into her south pasture." "Romantic," Gus said, dry as chalk dust. "He was insufferable about a fence," Fiona said, "and it came out sharper than rehearsed, almost real. Still is some days." Gus's mouth twitched, something adjacent to a smile, never quite committing to one. Cole's hand found hers on the tablecloth, and it wasn't nothing, the way his thumb moved once across her knuckles, like he'd done it 100 times instead of 4. And isn't that the thing about a good lie? It gets comfortable in your mouth fast, and before you know it, it stops tasting like a lie at all. "Your grandmother," Gus said, turning to her, "ran cattle out past the Trinity, didn't she? I remember your father. Good man. Bad luck, though. God rest him." "Both true," Fiona said. "I like her," Gus announced to the whole table, like Fiona wasn't sitting 6 inches from him. "Cole, you did something right for once." Cole's jaw did something small and controlled. "I know." Later, in the car, the gates of the Radcliffe estate closing behind them in the rear view, Fiona finally let out the breath she'd been holding since the salad course. "He likes me," she said. "That's a problem." "That's the point," Cole said, eyes on the road. "No. The point was a signature on a contract and a check that clears before foreclosure. Nobody said your grandfather would go and adopt me emotionally in the middle of dinner." Cole's grip on the wheel tightened just barely. "He put a clause in the will. Real stability, his words, verified however he sees fit before I get control of the company. That means dinners. That means him watching close. That means you being good at this for as long as it takes. And what do I get exactly while he's watching? The number we agreed on, wired the day the ranch note clears." He glanced at her. Quick, unreadable. "How you wanted business. This is business." Fiona looked out at the dark fields sliding by, half of them his, half of them hers, and no fence anywhere near as solid as the one sitting between them tonight. "Fine," she said. "Business." Her phone buzzed. Gus's number, somehow already saved in her contacts without her ever doing it herself. "You're a good influence on him," the text read. "Sunday lunch, both of you. I'm not asking." She read it twice before showing Cole, because there's a very specific kind of dread that comes from a text that pretends to be an invitation, but reads exactly like a summons. He read it once and said nothing, and that told her more than any words would have. Some men show up with flowers. Cole Radcliffe showed up with a notarized document, which, in hindsight, tells you exactly what kind of relationship this was always going to be. The Delgado ranch house had a porch that sagged a half-inch on the left side, and Fiona had never bothered fixing it, because her grandmother used to like the tilt, said it made the porch swing move on its own, like the house was doing a little work for you if you just let it. Cole stood on that porch 2 days later, in boots too clean for the mud he'd just walked through, looking about as out of place as a man could look. "You could have called," Fiona said, not opening the screen door yet. "You don't answer calls from me." Accurate, She let him in anyway. They sat across the kitchen table, hers scarred with 2 generations of knife marks and coffee rings, and laid the whole thing out like a business deal because that's what it was, or at least what they kept insisting it was to each other. Rules, Cole said. 1. Nothing physical unless it's in front of him. 2. You don't ask about the company. I don't ask about the ranch's finances beyond what I already know. 3. I get a say in Rule 3, Fiona cut in. I'm not a hired hand here, Radcliffe. If we're doing this, I decide what I'm comfortable performing and what I'm not. Cole studied her a beat too long, the kind of look that prices things without meaning to. Fine. What's your Rule 3? You don't lie to me about anything that actually matters. Lie to your grandfather all day long. That's the whole job description, but not to me. Something crossed his face, there and gone fast. Deal. And I want it in writing that you cover the note by the 15th, not the 20th. The bank doesn't care about your grandfather's feelings, and neither do I. And look, I'll say it. There's something almost romantic about 2 people negotiating a fake relationship with more precision than most people put into a real one. Half the fun of this job is watching them break their own rules before the ink's even dry. Cole pulled a folded paper from his jacket, already drafted, already notarized, the 15th already written in, like he'd known she'd ask before she knew it herself. You planned that, Fiona said, something almost like respect creeping into her voice. I plan everything. A pause. It's not always a compliment, if that helps. She almost laughed before she caught herself and signed instead, the pen scratching loud against the quiet kitchen. One more thing, Cole said, already standing to leave. Sunday lunch. Wear something that isn't the green dress. He'll notice the repeat and start asking questions neither of us wants to answer. You noticed I wore the same dress twice. I notice everything, he said, and walked out before she could decide what to do with that, which is a very expensive way of saying, I've been paying attention to you longer than I should admit. There's a particular sound a Dallas ballroom makes when old oil money gets together to remind itself it's still relevant. Ice against crystal, a string quartet trying to be heard over it. Somebody's heels clicking a little too fast across marble that cost more than most people's houses. The Kestrel Hotel ballroom had that sound in spades that night, and Fiona had grown up 2 counties over from most of the fortunes in that room, close enough to smell it, never quite close enough to touch it. Cole's hand sat at the small of her back, warm through the silk, and she hated how natural it felt after 3 weeks of practice, the kind of natural that should have scared her more than it did. Smile like you mean it, he murmured near her ear. Georgia's watching. Georgia Prescott stood by the bar in red, drink untouched, doing the kind of math on the 2 of them that only family does at a party. The math that isn't really about numbers. She'd been circling since the engagement announcement. Gus's other grandchild, the one who'd expected the company and gotten a cousin instead. Cousin Georgia, Fiona said, extending a hand Georgia looked at like it needed washing first. Fiona. Georgia's smile was all teeth and no warmth behind it. Funny. Cole's never mentioned you before this year, not once, and we talk. We kept it quiet, Cole said, smooth, practiced. Didn't want the company gossip getting there first. Sure. Georgia took a slow sip. Must be nice, though. Struggling little ranch, a note at the bank about to come due, and suddenly a Radcliffe fiancé shows up right on time. Almost cinematic, if you ask me. And you know the type. The ones who suspect a lie the loudest are usually the ones who'd have told the exact same one, given half the chance. Fiona's spine went straight. You checked my bank records? I checked public filings, Georgia said, unbothered as anything. Foreclosure notices are public records, sweetheart. I read the paper, same as anybody. Cole's hand pressed firmer against Fiona's back, part warning, part anchor. Georgia, enough. I'm just making conversation. Georgia's eyes never left Fiona's face. Congratulations, by the way, on the engagement, on the timing, on how well it all lined up. She walked off toward the bar, heels loud against the marble, leaving behind a silence neither of them rushed to fill. She knows, Fiona said finally. She suspects. Cole's jaw was tight as a fence wire. There's a difference. Suspecting doesn't hold up in front of my grandfather. Proof does. And if she finds proof? He didn't answer that one. The band eased into something slow, and he pulled her toward the floor instead, because dancing was easier than the truth, and because, close enough now to feel his heartbeat through his jacket, his hands, for a man who plans everything down to the notary stamp, weren't nearly as steady as his voice. Let me tell you something about the moment a fake relationship stops being fake. It never announces itself. There's no fireworks, no violin swell. It just shows up disguised as a busted water pump on a Thursday afternoon, and by the time you notice, it's already too late to call it business. He came out to the ranch with no good reason that day, said something about the fence line, about surveying the disputed acreage, but he stayed 3 hours past when the surveying was done, and neither one of them mentioned that out loud. Fiona was up to her elbows in a stuck water pump when he found her, cursing at a bolt that hadn't turned in a decade. Need help? I need a new pump. What I've got is you standing there in a shirt that costs more than this pump ever did. He took the shirt off, not dramatically, just practically, folding it over the fence post, rolling his sleeves up, and got down in the mud beside her, like manual labor wasn't a foreign concept to him, which she realized watching him work the wrench, it actually wasn't. Where'd you learn this? She asked. My grandfather made me work the rigs 2 summers before he'd let me anywhere near an office. Said a man who never got his hands dirty couldn't be trusted to run something built by men who did. A grunt, the bolt finally giving way. Hated him for it at the time. And now? Now I think it's the only decent thing he ever did that wasn't about the company. He looked up at her, mud on his forearm, something unguarded in his face that hadn't shown up at any dinner, any gala, any performance for his grandfather's benefit. I don't talk about that. Ever. I know, Fiona said quietly. That's why I asked. And there it is. The real kind of intimacy, the kind that has nothing to do with a first kiss. It's just somebody handing you something they don't hand anybody else, and trusting you not to drop it. Out of everything so far, that's the moment I'd point to as the one where this stopped being business. More than the gala, more than any dinner at that long table. The pump sputtered back to life, water finally moving through old pipe. Fiona sat back on her heels, streaked with mud, and something dangerously close to happiness. Thank you, she said. For real, not for the show. I know the difference, Cole said, and the way he looked at her made it clear he meant a good deal more than the pump. Neither of them moved closer. Neither of them moved away. The sun went down slow behind the both of them, and for once, nobody was watching to make sure they played their parts right. Sunday lunch ran long, Gus in good spirits, spinning a story about a rig fire back in '79 that Fiona was fairly sure grew a few feet taller every time he told it. Afterward, Cole walked her to her truck, the Texas evening heavy and gold around the both of them. He's getting attached, Cole said. That's good. That's what we needed. Is it? Fiona said, and the words came out flatter than a real question ever would. Fiona, don't say my name like that. Her voice came out unsteady, which annoyed her more than anything he could have said back. You say it like it means something, and I can't. I need it to just be a name right now, Cole. He stepped closer, instead of stepping back, which was exactly the wrong thing to do and exactly what she wanted him to do anyway. It does mean something. I've been trying not to say that for 3 weeks. You know that moment right before you do something you can't take back, where your whole body's already decided, and your head's still arguing the case. That's where they were standing, half a foot apart, gravel under their boots, and nothing but bad timing between them. She kissed him first, or he kissed her first. Neither one could have said afterward, and it didn't much matter, because there was no photographer this time, no grandfather, no Georgia doing math in a red dress, just his hand in her hair and her fist closing in his shirt, like she was scared he'd disappear the second she let go. It ended when it ended, both of them breathing like they'd run somewhere together. That wasn't in the rules, Fiona said. I know. I need to go. She was already backing toward the truck. Fiona. I need to go, Cole. Her voice cracked on his name, differently than before. Because a contract sitting between us and a dying man's whole heart, riding on us being convincing. That's a lot of weight to carry into a kiss that wasn't supposed to mean anything. I don't know what's real anymore, and I need to. She drove off before he could answer, gravel spitting behind her tires, and Cole stood alone in the dark, mud still faintly on his boots from a pump he'd have fixed for free. Contract or not, and there's something almost unbearable about a man realizing, standing by himself in the dark, that he's already in too deep to pretend otherwise. People like to say a secret only has power as long as nobody finds it. That's not quite true. A secret's got power the second somebody finds it and decides not to say anything yet. That silence is where the real damage gets done. The email showed up on a Tuesday, forwarded from an address Fiona didn't recognize, subject line blank. Inside, a photo of the signed side agreement between her and Cole, the 15th of the month clause, both signatures, the number they'd agreed on, circled in red like a warning shot. Careful, the message read, no name attached, though the phrasing had George's fingerprints smeared all over it. Grandfather's estate lawyer would find this fascinating. Fiona called Cole before she'd even finished reading it twice. She has the contract, Fiona said. No greeting, nothing. The actual paper, Cole. How? A long silence on his end. My assistant. Has to be. George has been circling her for weeks. I should have seen it coming. So what does she want? I don't know yet. She'll want something before she uses it. Georgia doesn't burn a card unless she's already got the next one sitting in her hand. Fiona paced her kitchen, past the same table they'd signed the deal at, mocking her a little now. If your grandfather sees that contract, I lose the ranch and you lose the company. She wins the whole thing just by mailing an envelope. I know what's at stake. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you've had 3 weeks to tell him some version of the truth on your own terms, and instead we're stuck here waiting to find out if his own granddaughter beats us to it. Cole's voice went flat, controlled in that way he got when he was furthest from calm. What do you want me to say, Fiona? That I've spent 3 weeks trying to figure out how to tell an 81-year-old man who's already buried my father that the one thing he actually believed in, us, isn't what he thinks it is. I don't have a script for that. For once in my life, I don't have a script. Neither of them's wrong here if you want my honest read on it. That's the whole tragedy of a good lie. Everybody holding one has a real reason for telling it. Georgia called that same night. No pretense, no small talk, straight to business. I want in, she said. Voting shares. Enough to matter. You keep your fiancé, your grandfather stays happy and none the wiser, and I get what should have been mine from the start. And if I say no, Cole said, then grandfather gets an envelope with a very interesting attachment, and we find out together how forgiving a dying man's heart really is. George's voice went almost gentle, which was worse than if it hadn't. You've got until Sunday, Cole, family dinner. Bring me an answer, or I'll bring him one myself. Gus called Thursday morning, and his voice sounded thinner than it had at the gala, thinner than at Sunday lunch, thinner than Cole had let himself notice until right that second, phone pressed hard against his ear. The doctors are saying things I don't care to repeat, Gus said, no preamble at all. So I'm asking for one thing, and I need you to actually give it to me instead of managing me like I'm a board meeting. Anything. I want a real wedding, not the estate lawyer's paperwork kind. I want to stand in a church and watch my grandson marry a woman who looks at him the way your grandmother looked at me for 51 years. I want it before I can't walk myself down that aisle to go see it. A pause, rough around the edges. I want it in 6 weeks. Cole's hand went white-knuckled around the phone. 6 weeks. I don't have much longer than that to spend hoping, son. Don't tell me you can't. Tell me you will. He hung up before Cole could answer either way. Fiona was in the barn when he showed up, unannounced again, and one look at his face told her this wasn't about offense. He told her everything. The doctors, the 6 weeks, the real wedding a dying man wanted to see with his own 2 eyes, before he couldn't see much of anything anymore. Fiona sat down hard on a hay bale, the weight of it landing somewhere she didn't have room for. A real wedding isn't in the contract, she said quietly. I know. Georgia wants shares by Sunday, or she tells him everything. And now, He wants an actual marriage in 6 weeks. She let out a breath that had no air left in it. Cole, there's no version of this where both those things end without somebody getting destroyed. Him, if we lie all the way to an altar. Him, if we tell the truth and it breaks his heart on the way out the door. There's no clean version left. Cole sat beside her on the hay, close enough that his shoulder touched hers. There might be one. Don't. Fiona stood up fast, putting distance back between them like she needed the air. Don't do that. Don't start looking for the version where this works out for everybody, because I've already run every one of them. And they all end with somebody I care about getting hurt. Your grandfather, me, you, maybe all three. Fiona. I mean it, Cole. Her arms crossed over her chest, a wall going up brick by brick right in front of him. I signed up to save a ranch. That's it. That's all this was supposed to be. I can't sit here and let you turn a business arrangement into something I'm going to be picking up the pieces of in 6 months. When your grandfather's gone and the company's yours and you realize you don't actually... I don't want a fake wedding. He said it quiet, but it cut clean through what she was building. I never did. I think I stopped wanting that the day I watched you fix a pump with your own 2 hands instead of calling somebody in to do it for you. Stop. Her voice wavered, the wall cracking despite everything she was throwing at it. You don't get to say things like that right now. Not with Georgia circling, not with your grandfather dying, not when I can't tell anymore if you mean it, or if you're just scared and looking for somewhere warm to put that fear. I'm not scared. He stood too, closing the distance she'd just fought to open. I'm done being careful, Fiona. I've spent my whole life being careful, and it's cost me every real thing I've ever wanted, including you, for 3 straight weeks. I don't know how to fix the contract or Georgia or my grandfather's heart, but I know I don't want to marry you as a lie. If I marry you, I want it to be because it's real, because I love you, not because a dead man's will told me to, even if saying that out loud costs me everything else. And that was the exact second every wall she'd been building came down at once. Not slow, not careful, but all at once, the way things do when they've been cracking a long time and nobody was paying close enough attention to notice. Fiona's eyes filled, and for once she let them. Didn't fight it, didn't blink it back the way she'd been trained to her whole life. You can't just say that, she whispered, voice breaking clean down the middle. You can't just say that and expect me to... She stopped, pressed a hand over her mouth, tried again. I've spent 3 weeks telling myself none of this was real so it wouldn't hurt when it ended. And I don't know how to stop now that you've gone and made it real on purpose. Then stop trying to. He reached for her face, and she let him. Say it back, or don't. I'll still be standing here either way. I love you too, she said, like the words had been sitting behind her teeth for weeks, waiting for permission. God help me, Cole, I do. And when he kissed her that time, there was nothing careful about it. Nothing left to protect, nothing left to perform for anybody watching, just 2 people who'd finally stopped arguing with the truth. That's the point of no return, she said against his mouth, half a laugh, half a sob. You say that out loud to him, there's no walking it back? I know, he said. I'm done walking things back. Sunday dinner arrived heavier than any dinner that had come before it. Georgia sat across the table in black, patient as a held breath, watching Cole the way a lawyer watches a defendant who hasn't figured out what he's going to say yet. Well, Georgia said, before the first course had even landed. Grandfather, there's something Cole's been meaning to tell you. Haven't you, Cole? Gus looked between them, confusion cutting through the frailty in his face. Georgia. No. Cole stood, chair scraping loud against the floor. She's right. There's something I need to say, and it's not what she thinks it is. He looked at Fiona first, a full second, steady, like he was asking permission and offering an apology in the same breath. Then he looked at his grandfather. The engagement started as an arrangement, Cole said. A contract. Fiona needed money to save her family's ranch. I needed to look stable enough to keep the company you built. That's how it started. I want you to hear that from me before Georgia says it uglier than it already is. Gus's face moved through something complicated. Hurt, betrayal, the particular devastation of an old man realizing he'd been managed by people he trusted. You lied to me. Both of you. At my own table. Yes, Cole said, offering nothing in his own defense, just the truth, laid flat on the table between them. Georgia sat back, satisfied, the whole room hers now. Well, I suppose the wedding's off then. That's the part I need you to actually hear. Cole ignored her entirely, eyes only on his grandfather. The contract started it, but somewhere in the middle of pretending, I stopped pretending. I fell in love with her, not the version we performed for you. The real one, the one who fixes her own water pumps and doesn't flinch when I tell her the truth. That part was never in any contract. That part's the only real thing I've done in longer than I can remember that didn't come with a spreadsheet attached. Gus said nothing for a long moment, his hands trembling faintly against the tablecloth, older suddenly than Cole had ever let himself see him. Get out, Gus said quietly. Both of you. I need to think. Fiona stood, shaking, and left without a word, because there was nothing left to say that wouldn't make it worse. Cole followed her out into the dark, past the house that might not be his to inherit anymore. Georgia stayed seated, and the second the door swung shut behind them, her whole demeanor changed, the concern dropping off her face like a coat she didn't need anymore. I tried to warn you about him, Grandfather. Months ago, you didn't want to hear it then, either. She reached for his hand across the table, and Gus pulled it back before she got there. I'm the one who's been here. Every board meeting, every hospital visit, every single year you needed somebody steady. And you were about to hand the whole company to a man who couldn't even tell you the truth about his own engagement. I deserve that company more than he ever will. And you know it. And there it is. The second lie of the night, dressed up as loyalty, and this one landed a lot worse than the first. Gus looked at her a long moment, something cold settling into his face that hadn't been there even when Cole was confessing. You knew, he said slowly. You had that contract for weeks, Georgia. You sat on it, waited for the exact night it would hurt the most, in front of the exact people it would hurt hardest, and you're sitting here telling me you did that out of love for this family. Grandfather, I only wanted... I know exactly what you wanted. His voice, weak as it was, still carried the weight of a man who'd built an empire out of reading people. You wanted the company, and you were willing to use my own heart to get it. At least Cole lied because he was ashamed. You lied because you thought it'd win you something. He waved a trembling hand toward the door. Get out, Georgia, you too. I've had enough family loyalty for one night to last me the rest of however long I've got left. Georgia's mouth opened, then closed, the triumph draining fast out of her face. She left without another word, heels sharp against the floor. Not measured and unbothered this time, just fast. Like she finally understood how badly that had gone. Cole followed Fiona out into the dark, past the house that might not be his to inherit anymore. I'm sorry, he said, catching up to her at her truck. I should have told him sooner, before it cost you the ranch, too. You should have. Fiona's voice broke clean down the middle. But you didn't do it for the money, Cole. You did it for me, and I don't know how to hate you for that, even though I really, really want to right now. She got in the truck and drove away, and this time he didn't call after her, and there's a particular kind of quiet that follows a man standing alone in a driveway, watching taillights disappear, knowing full well he earned every bit of it. 3 days passed with no word from the estate, no word from Gus, no word from Fiona. Cole spent them in his office not working, staring at a company he might lose and a woman he'd already lost through his own delay, and on the 4th day, his phone finally rang. Gus. Come to the house, was all he said. Cole found him on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket despite the Texas heat, looking smaller than any Radcliffe patriarch had a right to look. Sit, Gus said. Cole sat. I've had 3 days to be angry. I used every hour of it. You have every right to be. I know I do. Don't tell me my rights. Gus's eyes, sharp despite everything else failing, fixed on his grandson. I put that clause in the will because I was scared, Cole. Scared you'd run this company the way you run everything else. Alone, armored, untouchable. I wanted proof you could let somebody in, and instead of doing it the honest way, you went and built me a performance. I know. But you stood at my table and told me the truth anyway, once it stopped protecting you and started costing you everything. Gus's voice roughened. That's not nothing, boy. Most men I've known would have let that lie ride clear to the grave and never once thought twice about it. You didn't. Give an old man some credit for knowing the difference. Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I love her, Grandpa. Not the version I built for you. The real one. I don't know if she'll ever speak to me again, but I need you to know that part was never a lie, whatever else was. Gus was quiet a long moment, the porch swing beside him creaking in a wind that wasn't there. Your grandmother, he said finally, found out I proposed to her half to unite 2 drilling leases. Took me 11 years to admit that to her out loud. She forgave me faster than I ever forgave myself. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Old folks forgive love a lot quicker than young folks do, son. We've usually made the exact same mistake ourselves one time or another, and we know how it eats a person up carrying it alone. Go find your girl, Cole. Don't take 11 years to say the true thing. I don't have that kind of time to wait around on you. Fiona was in the barn again. She was always in the barn, he was starting to understand. It was where she went to be honest with herself. When he found her, out of breath from driving too fast down gravel roads, he knew better than his own driveway. I'm not marrying you for a contract, Cole said, before she could tell him to leave. I'm not marrying you for my grandfather or the company or anything on paper. I'm asking you, actually asking, for the first time since this whole thing started, because I don't know how to build a life that doesn't have you fixing something in it, cursing at a bolt, telling me the truth even when it costs you. Fiona set the wrench down slowly. You told him everything. Everything. He's not thrilled about the arrangement. He's a good deal less unthrilled about the part where I meant it in the end. Cole crossed the barn, stopped a foot from her, close enough that she could see his hands still weren't steady, hadn't been in weeks. I know I don't get to ask you to trust me again just because the lie's finally over. That's not how trust works, and I know it. But I'm asking anyway, because the only thing I've ever gotten right without a script was falling for you. Fiona looked at him a long moment, mud on both their hands, everything between them finally out in the open air, where it could either survive honestly or not survive at all. Ask me for real then, she said. Skip the estate. Skip the ranch. Just you, asking. Marry me, Cole said, because I love you, not because of anything else. She crossed the last foot of distance herself. The church wasn't the biggest one in Dallas, and Fiona had picked it on purpose, small enough that Gus wouldn't have to sit through an hour of ceremony. He didn't have the strength for any more. He walked her partway down the aisle himself, since her own grandmother wasn't there to do it, leaning hard on a cane in one hand and Fiona's arm in the other. And by the third pew his legs gave out on him gently enough that Cole caught him before anyone in the room even noticed. I'm walking the rest of it, Gus muttered, waving off the wheelchair somebody tried to bring over. Sit me down up front. I'll walk what I can walk. And that was Gus Radcliffe in one sentence, honestly. A man who'd spent his very last reserves of strength making sure nobody saw him need help, right up until the last possible second he could get away with it. He made it to the front pew. He watched his grandson marry a woman who fixed her own water pumps and didn't flinch at the truth. And when Cole kissed her, Gus didn't bother hiding the tears the way he'd hidden almost everything else his whole life. Georgia sat 2 rows back, quiet, in green instead of black for once, and nobody made a thing of it either way. 6 weeks, exactly like he'd asked for. Gus lived 4 more months past that wedding, long enough to see Fiona's ranch turn a profit for the first time in a decade, long enough to hold court at Sunday lunches, telling the rig fire story one more time, taller each telling, long enough to watch his grandson laugh in a way Gus swore he hadn't heard since before Cole's father died. He went in his sleep, in his own bed, with Cole and Fiona both there the night before. Fiona's hand in his the way her grandmother used to hold her own dying kin, steady and unafraid. Don't you two go soft and boring on me, were close to his last real words, said to Cole over a late dinner the night before, half a laugh in it. Somebody in this family's got to still be getting their hands dirty in 20 years, and it sure as hell won't be me. There's a particular kind of grief that comes with losing somebody who got to see the ending they wanted first. It still hurts like anything, but it carries a little more peace folded in underneath it than the other kind does. At the reading of the will, the lawyer got through the company shares to Cole, the ranch debt formally forgiven in Fiona's name, before he reached the last page, a smaller provision tucked in almost as an afterthought. That left Georgia a controlling stake in the company's charitable foundation and a seat on its board. No voting shares in the parent company attached. He wrote a letter to go with it, the lawyer said, sliding an envelope across the table to her. Georgia read it alone out on the porch and came back inside with her eyes red in a way she didn't try very hard to hide. She never told anyone exactly what it said, but she showed up to Thanksgiving that year, and every year after, and nobody in that family ever brought up red dresses or forwarded emails again, because as it turns out, most people don't need to be destroyed to learn something. They just need somebody to leave the door open a crack. 8 months after the wedding, the fence line between the two properties had a gate in it now, unlocked. Worn smooth from crossing back and forth so many times, neither of them remembered whose land they were standing on half the time. Fiona kept a photo of Gus on her workbench, right beside the bottle labeled 14, the one she'd never quite finished making, the one that still smelled a little like cedar and rain and something warm underneath it all. Cole found her there most evenings, watching her work the way Gus used to watch a fire he'd started with his own 2 hands, and thought, not for the first time and not for the last, that the only contract worth keeping was the one nobody made him sign, and the only inheritance that mattered was the one Gus left behind that wasn't written into any will at all. Okay, if that ending got you a little emotional, you're not alone. This one hit different for me, too. And honestly, I think the real lesson here isn't about fake dating or oil money or even the wedding. It's what Gus said near the end, that lying to protect someone is still lying. The truth costs you something every time, but it's never as expensive as the years you lose pretending. Cole almost lost everything because he waited too long to say what was real. Fiona almost walked away because she was scared to want something for herself, and the both of them only got their happy ending the moment they stopped managing each other and started being honest. So here's my question for you. Is there something you've been putting off saying to someone or even to yourself? Let that sit for a second. If this story got you, that's exactly the kind of thing I make here every week. Real love, real stakes, no shortcuts. So hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me which character you related to most, Cole or Fiona. I read every single comment, and I'll see you in the next story.